All right, guys, Alex Funk here from How I Get 15 Recs. I'm just kidding, but little part two action for you guys now that we're in the virtual world. So I wanted to make this really quick. I didn't do my hair this morning, so if it looks kind of goofy, that's why. But I really want to just pound this out. I'll be short and sweet with all my little tips for you guys as to getting 10 to 15 recs every single time on the virtual presentations. And so the very first tip I have for you guys is have fun and bring the energy, okay? Every demo, when I get done with it, I'm exhausted because through a computer screen, that's your way to get the connection with the customer. You've got to be like up here. You've got to be talking like strongly through your computer screen. You've got to be laughing. Everything you say, you got to say with a smile. And you got to be just like the cheesy college kids showing kitchen stuff. And you have to own that. And you got to bring the energy and you got to bring the excitement for Mr. and Mrs. Jones. I think that the more that they smile and the more that they laugh, the more recommendations you're going to get. And that should, in your head, you should be thinking like, oh, duh, because you want to be someone that someone wants to refer to their friend. Nobody's going to refer the knife kid that's making them bored. Like nobody, that's like a burden. They don't want to put that on their friend. But if they just laughed with you and had fun with you and it was actually genuinely highlighted their day for an hour, they want to send you to their friend. And so my number one tip is bring the energy and have fun with Mrs. Jones. I have a little nugget for you guys. I'm going to put 71 Cutco jokes in the description below. You're welcome. We put a lot of work into that thing. I don't take credit for all of the jokes. The credit where it's due is on the sheet. But there's a lot of great jokes. I want everyone in Cutco to get their hands on that sheet because it's so much more fun when you and Mrs. Jones are laughing and having a good time. So that's my number one tip is you got to bring the energy. You got to have fun and you got to be someone that Mrs. Jones wants to refer to her friends. And if you can't bring the energy in your demos because you're doing too many back-to-back, you got to create longer time spots in between. It's more than worth it to do 6 demos that you can bring it every single time to mentally and emotionally and be present with Mrs. Jones than to do 8 back-to-back-to-back. You're going to sell more Cutco. You're going to get more recs. Ultimately, you're going to just be better at the job, okay? First tip, bring the energy. Second tip, just like in the last video, you got to pre-frame it, okay? So you got to pre-frame that you're going to ask for recommendations. And how you do this, I want to give a shout out to Sam Paulsner, and I'll drop this script in the description below as well. But when you get to, let's say right here, thank you for helping me out towards my goals. And what you should do is drop a little line about how the President's Club right now, the world is really weird and who knows what the job market will look like. But one thing that will help you a ton is a President's Club letter because it's a hand-signed letter of recommendation from the president of the company and blah, blah, blah. Well, then you get to the scholarship and you say, Mrs. Jones, the scholarship is based solely on sales, but we have this automatic sponsorship that isn't. And so I'll mention it at the end, but because we're part of the Direct Sales Association, we don't go door to door or call random people or anything like that. So the only way I can continue to pay my way through school is through recommendations. In fact, everyone I talk to either owns Cutco or was recommended by a friend. And so in addition to you, your friend Jared Erickson also recommended 9 other people, which means he's a sponsor of the Knife Guy, one of his proudest accomplishments, I'm sure. And we'll get to that at the end. But my biggest goal is genuinely not to sell you $10,000 of Cutco today. My biggest goal is that we have enough fun, whereas over the course of the next 30 minutes, you'd want to introduce me to all of your friends. And so I only know so many people, and a guy can't go door to door selling knives, especially during COVID. You'd probably get arrested for that. And so the point is, you want to frame it right at the beginning. What I've seen so far is people are nodding with this. Like people are like digging this. They're like, oh yeah, I love that. Like that makes sense. And so I've seen that every single time, and it feels good knowing that they're in for this sponsorship thing. They don't know a lot about it yet, but they're like mentally prepared for it down the road. That's gold. Thank you, Sam P, for that. And then the next thing is you got to come in prepared. And so whether you're coming into the presentation and you have scripts that you're using, you got like for the recommendations, especially recommendations is your business. All right. Especially in the virtual world now. I love to mention this is like recommendations is different than ever before because you can show to anyone, anywhere, anytime. I've got demos with Louisiana, Montana, West Virginia today. It's so exciting that the possibilities are endless for everyone. And so recommendations now are a little different because the more precise you are in your asking, you can get anywhere in the world and show Cutco. Very exciting. And so you got to come in prepared. And whether that's a script, on paper that you're holding up, or whether it's on your cell phone and you're holding it like next to the camera right here, or whether that's just on your desktop. So for example, before I start my presentation, I've got my Rec Approach ready for me, and I just switch tabs. And so here's our Rec Approach. I want to give another shout out, Paige Weber. A lot of this came from her, but that's the approach we use. And so I'm not going to read it, but basically it's like, hey, this is my favorite part of the presentation. I've got a big smile on my face. This is where you can really help me out. And so in it, I mentioned at the end, the sponsorship. So, okay, so for every 10 you come up with, first, make sure you say the joke, come up with 100 to 200 people. On the virtual thing, it's so funny because you can watch them and then you're like, I'm just getting 10 to 15. Key, 10 to 15. And then on the bottom, okay, so for every 10 people you come up with, you become one of my sponsors. Once I reach 50 sponsors, my manager actually gives me $100 of Cutco that I can raffle off to all my sponsors. So it's a really cool way for me to give back to the people who've helped me out the most. And then what you're doing is you're mentally preparing them for 10, okay? And you're gonna get 10 if you do this right. So when you ask, you get to the bottom, who's the world's nicest person? Who's the first person you throw down on the world's nicest people list? Just like my last video, if you have a notebook out, this is how I would do it. So you have a notebook. You say, this is my sponsorship notebook, Mrs. Jones. What I'm going to write on top is actually Mrs. Jones' nice people list, and laugh and smile. They giggle a little bit. And so it's like, who's the first person you put on the world's nicest people list? If they hesitate for 1 second, if they don't already have a name coming out of their mouth, you say, it's so easy, by the way, if you scroll through your phones, because then the contacts just kind of jump out at you. And as soon as you get one person down, you are golden. And the reason why is all you have to say is, who else? Who's next? Who's the next nicest person? And you're like this on your screen. You should be this close to your camera. And as you're doing the recommendations, you got to be having more fun than Mrs. Jones. And so like the energy part of this that I'm talking about, you got to bring the energy up from start to finish. And recommendations has to be your pride and joy. It is for me, and that's why I get Rex, is because like I genuinely love this part of the presentation. This is my opportunity to connect with more people. And so if you're in your computer screen, you're like right there for Mrs. Jones. You're having a blast with this. You're smiling. You're laughing. You got to have fun with Rex. And so as soon as you ask who's the nicest person you know, they might hesitate. They might give you one. It's like, okay, who's next? Like, who's the next nicest person? Thank them after each person. And then what I would do, you start in the notebook and you show it to them, but you don't use it. Kind of deceptive. What you're actually going to do is just open the Q app on your phone and be typing in the Recs as you go. That way you don't have to do it later. And so it's a little quicker. And so as you're typing in on the Q app, all you do, as soon as she gives you a rec, so Mrs. Jones, who's the nicest person you know? Mrs. Jones tells you Karen Elliott. You say, oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Is she married? Okay, got it. And what's her husband's name? Got it. Okay, so Troy. Cool. Where are they from? Okay, awesome. Yeah. Okay. And sometimes Mrs. Jones will be ready to give you the phone number. If she is, that sets the tone. She's going to give you the phone number after each rec. If not, if she doesn't spit the number out right away, you can interrupt and say, we'll just keep going with names. We'll get the numbers after. Just make sure you get the numbers after. Okay. And then the next thing, after each person you say, who's next? Well, then you go into the thought jogger process of this. And so on the approach, I just have the thought joggers right there waiting for me. And so as soon as Mrs. Jones hesitates for 2 or 3 seconds, what I'm doing is spitting a thought jogger at her. So I'm going to say, okay, who's the best cook that you know, or who loves to cook? If she hesitates for 3 seconds, it's okay, who has an incredible kitchen? And basically what you're doing is you're just getting them rolling. And if you reach a point where there's a standstill, the best icebreaker always is, who cuts your hair, Mrs. Jones? They love to gossip. Who cuts your hair? You guys probably have amazing thought joggers. The point is, if there's any like break in the action of getting recs, you're spitting the thought jogger at them, and you're constantly, with really specific questions, you're getting their brain to think of specific people. And so, for example, if I asked you on this video right now, like, name 10 nice people, like, okay, blank, blank. But if I said, okay, who do you drink coffee with? I'd say my friend Reese. Kid loves coffee. And so you want to be super specific, get them moving throughout the list, and thank them after each person. And then once you get to 5, be like, Mrs. Jones, you're halfway there. This is so easy, isn't it? Like, now it's just getting fun. And the point is, you just want to have fun with it. Once you hit 10, now here's, I call this 10 to 15 recs. So here's how you get 10. If you want to get 15, you got to ask for 15, okay? And so you can either do this when you get to 10 or you can do this from the start. I still offer a free peeler because I have a good stock of them, and you could bonus one if you wanted to. Yeah, it all comes down to, is it worth it for you to bonus a peeler in? And so I say, hey, you're at 10. Thank you so much for being a sponsor. If you get to 15, I'll give you a free veggie peeler. And so a lot of that is you got to hype it up in the beginning, but a lot of that is just you got to hype up the peeler for them. You offer it for free. That's how you get to the next level. And the point I'm trying to make is people love to hit benchmarks. And so if you're asking for 10 and you say a sponsorship is 10, you said it at the beginning, you're probably going to get 10 because that feeling of accomplishment is natural. And people love to hit the benchmark that's given to them. So if I say, okay, the next level is 15, and if you get to 15, here's what you get. People like to hit that benchmark. And so if you want to get 20 recs every time, feel free to figure out the right way to word it and phrase it. It's like, hey, if you get 20 to 30 people, 20 is actually you become a sponsor. I'm sure that would work because people love hitting benchmarks is the point I'm trying to make. And so that's a really big part of it. I really think that's it is just, you got to have fun with it. That's the rec approach that I'm using. Basically have fun, ask for what you want, pre-frame it at the beginning, and then all the little psychology stuff throughout from the last video as well. Get your approach down. Thank you guys for watching. Like I mentioned throughout, credit where it's due. And the opportunity is just endless with the virtual world now. So go out there and get it. Go have fun, you guys. That's the main thing. Jack Ryan in the window. There he is. Shout out Jack Ryan. Big push so far for SC2.